In today's episode, I sat down on a Zoom interview with a Grateful Dead fan who's been following the band since 1985, and we had like a really nice natural conversation where I just asked a lot about how we got into the band and learned a lot about the history, and it was really lovely. And then he even asked me some questions in the end. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you would like to either join me for an interview, even if you just want to do voice or if you want to do video, or if not, you can always just send me an email and I can read it out on an episode where I share stories. Just let me know. I'm enjoying this journey. The other really exciting thing is that I reached my 3,000 watch hours this morning as of June 2nd to apply for monetization of the channel. And so now I'm in a review process for that. But I was able to get that all done in about 5 weeks. And things really started taking off when I did my reaction video to Billy Strings. And then from Billy Strings, I got led to the Dead. And now I'm on a journey where I went to a Phish concert, I've been to a Goose concert, I went to a Billy Strings set at the Outlaw Music, and the next thing on the calendar is going to the Dead and Company San Francisco 60th anniversary tour, reunion, whatever, with the Dead and Company in San Francisco. So, as I'm preparing for that, I still want to keep learning so that I have as much knowledge of the Grateful Dead and their catalog as possible so that I can enjoy that experience as much as possible. As I've learned from watching Terrapin Station, first the studio and then a live version, I liked it so much better the second time when I had a skeleton of what to expect. So I would like to at least get a bunch of the songs under my belt before I go so that I can really just enjoy the experience and get to the point, which you guys are saying, I just need to let go and listen to the music and not analyze it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do when I'm there. So if I can at least hear it once to kind of get the analysis out of the way and I just be like, oh, I'm just going to experience this. Because I enjoy songs much more when I've heard them once and I know what they're about, if that makes sense. And I can like understand the words. All right, enjoy this episode and hope you like it. I'm doing an interview today with someone who volunteered to be interviewed. Right now, I don't know anything, so I'm just going to come in with the questions of an innocent child, honestly. And sometimes if I ask something that seems so stupid, it's because I don't know anything. So and also people who are watching may not know anything either. So it's good when some of the best interviews are when people just ask genuine questions so that it's not like people get so presumptuous. Like, oh, you don't know about da 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 da. I'm like, no, actually.
How would you, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we have to start from the beginning.
So are we recording now?
Yeah, we're on. We're
Awesome.
ready. So I want to know, I guess we should just start with how you can either start with your background or if you want to just start with like where you started with the Dead, I guess.
Yeah, so it's pretty funny. I went to a high school, suburbs of Chicago, that, you know how most high schools, you've got like your jocks and your nerds and your burnouts and all your different sort of cliques in your high school. We were like any other high school that had that, but every group were also Deadheads. And so, and in the summertime, when the Dead would come and play Alpine Valley up in Wisconsin, which was like a 45-minute drive, um, all the cliques and groups would come together. And so that was like the common thread that kind of connected. So I discovered them when I was a sophomore in high school, and a buddy of mine put together who had already gone to a bunch of shows had put together a mixtape for me as I date myself here.
So what year was this? Like where
This
are
was in so this was in 1985.
Okay.
And so and it was a combination of some studio stuff, and the live stuff he put on was live stuff from live albums. So, you know, well produced, quality stuff that you could kind of get your head around. Because at the time, I mean, a lot of it was audience tape. And then there were the live albums, and then there were the occasional soundboard bootlegs that you'd get from somebody, and those would become like really highly circulated. And so that's why a lot of Deadheads know certain things like Cornell 77. It got out early, and so when you were just trading tapes with people, that was like really high quality and an amazing show. And that's why people are sort of like, yeah, that's an awesome show, because they just had a great copy of it really early on.
Okay, and are we talking about cassettes?
We are talking about cassettes.
Okay, I just want to be clear because you know that little kids today don't know what a cassette is.
Yeah, there's
So
a really funny meme that has a cassette tape and a pencil. And it basically says something to the effect of if you're old, if you're younger than blah blah, you have no idea the relationship between these two things. And the relationship is the tape would come out and you'd have to put your pencil in and twist it. Yeah.
yes, no, I did have my first car had a cassette deck because it was like a '93 Cadillac Eldorado, and then I saved up my money to put in a CD player. So,
Oh, that's
but my
awesome.
parents were early adopters of CDs because my dad always had the latest technology. So I think they had a CD player from like 1989 or something. So we had, but back then you couldn't burn CDs. We couldn't burn CDs until
Oh
like
no. Yeah.
2000, and I remember being in like I think it was 1995 or so when like my
Yeah.
dad had the technology to burn a CD, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, how like magic! Like how did you do this?" Okay, so you're a Gen X.
So I'm a Gen Xer, and
Okay,
and then I went off to so I
so
went
this
to a
is like
bunch of
Ferris
shows.
Bueller's Day Off. Like you're like Chicago suburbs, 1985. Isn't this like
Total. That was our childhood. That
okay,
like Breakfast Club. I will, as an aside,
okay,
my high school had a punishment called the Breakfast Club. And when we heard there was going to be a movie called The Breakfast Club by John Hughes, who was from the suburbs I lived in,
yes, yes, the Brat
we're like, how are
Pack.
you going to do a movie? Yes, the Brat Pack. We're like, how are you going to do a movie about a before school detention, which is what a Breakfast Club was? I had gotten to Breakfast Clubs my sophomore year at in high school. We put a piano in the boys' bathroom, and we were told it was a juvenile prank. And I thought to myself, well, that's precisely what it was. So I felt that two Breakfast Club punishment seemed appropriate.
Okay, so I'm just gonna set the scene because I love telling stories in order because it just always helps me because it's gonna be a long
Yep.
journey from here, I'm sure. So it's 1985. You're a sophomore in high school. You find out you get this tape. People are
Yep.
passing them around, and then they would come to the general area for
Yeah.
concerts.
So basically, let's see, I graduated in 86. I saw them the summer of 85. So that was after junior year. So they would come to town every summer and play three shows at Alpine Valley. And we'd all make the pilgrimage up there. Sometimes and the other thing is that I'm sure you've discovered is that you'd go to all the shows because you never knew what they were going to play, and it wasn't a set list. So there'd be no overlap. So you would hear like 60 unique tunes over the course of 3 nights. And so we'd go up there, we'd camp out at there's a golf course that you'd park on, and so we just all kind of camp out there, and we'd spend the weekend. And I went to one show with a buddy of mine, different buddy of mine. It was his first show. I knew all of like one song. They played Truckin'. I'm like, all right, that's a song I know. Maybe there's one other song from my buddy's tape that I recognize, but otherwise it was all like just taking it all in and taking in the scene. Because I guess the thing that you also have to consider is it was quite the scene. It hadn't exploded yet with Touch of Grey and In the Dark, but it was still a pretty big scene, and you saw people of every flavor out there doing their thing. So you really sort of took in the circus while you were also there to hear the music.
Okay, and was there anything? Was this like nothing like this at the time? Like was this like you couldn't find anything else like this? Like this was like the
No,
cool
not at
thing, and
all.
like
And not only it wasn't a cool thing. That this is the other thing that's really interesting
okay.
is that historically these were the outsiders. These are the people who were. It wasn't mainstream. It was kind of underground, culty. People, I'm sure, would look down upon deadheads as just kind of like whatever dirty hippies or people who aren't like connected to what's actually happening now. And it was sort of like a subculture that slowly built and built. But the reality is that when you would meet people who were deadheads, you didn't come across them often, but when you did, it was always really cool because it was somewhere random. And I'm not going to jump ahead yet because I know you want to keep this thing somewhat chronological. So, had a great time at that show. And then when school started up again over spring break, the Dead were playing three shows at the Philly Spectrum. And I remember, and a bunch of my friends were going, and I remember telling my parents, or asking my parents, I'd love to go to Philadelphia to go see the Grateful Dead over spring break. And I'm sure they thought I was absolutely crazy, but they said, oh, well, they've got really good friends who live in the area. I could stay with them. The friends that I could use their car. And so I met up with a bunch of my friends and we went to these three shows at the Philly Spectrum. And those are my first going on the road and seeing the Dead versus just kind of seeing them in my own hometown.
Okay, so you road tripped to
So I
Philadelphia.
road trip to Philadelphia.
Wow. Okay.
And that was a blast. And it was like, wow, there's this whole scene. It's like this traveling circus. And I can't wait to see them again.
Yeah.
And back in the day, this is the other thing that's so insane to think about. So if there was no web, there's no internet.
No.
So here's how you learned about the tour. There was a Grateful Dead phone number, Grateful Dead hotline, a 1-800 number that had a recorded message that would list all the dates, and then it would list the details of how you could mail in for tickets. And it was very precise. It was a certain number 10 envelope or whatever, a particular size note card. You had to have a specific thing on there, a money order, a self-stamped, self-addressed return envelope, and then you'd mail it in. And it was a whole big deal. I
So you'd
mean,
have to
but that's
listen to the whole 5 minute recorded message. So you'd have to just like wait for your city to come up and just like hurry,
yes.
get a pencil, and then
Yeah,
like hurry, jot it down.
totally. That's
Okay.
exactly how it worked. Yeah.
Okay, that's crazy. And then how did you guys even find out about the phone number though? Because there's no internet. Like I don't understand. You
Right.
just like
It was the Deadheads were like the original social network. I mean, you just knew people who knew people who knew people, and just information would flow through people. So it wasn't instantaneous, but it would happen slowly over time. You would learn stuff. I mean, in fact, just even learning about the band, there was a couple books, but occasionally maybe you'd see a newspaper article or friends would tell you stories, but it wasn't like you could just go on to Wikipedia and be like, oh, this is the history of the band.
yeah, that's interesting. And then also like 85 because now I'm watching stuff from the 70s from them. So that means that
Yeah.
was way even before your time. So
Oh, totally. And in fact, those of us who were seeing them in the 80s were like, oh, it would have been so cool to have seen them in the 70s. Like 73 is my favorite year. And believe it or not, I've occasionally had dreams where I'm at a show in 73 and I'm like, I know this show. And I kind of know it's a dream, but I'm like, I'm just going to go with it. I want to go see them play, whatever they're going to play.
wow. Okay. So then I have question. I have
Yeah.
good questions for this. Okay. So then what was it specifically that drew you in? Like what was the thing? Was it, like music, the scene, the philosophy, the people? Like what was the first like hook about it?
You know, there was something, it was a combination of stuff. So it wasn't like there was one thing. It was kind of like a perfect storm of the music was really cool and there was this sense of community and being part of something and being part of something that's been happening for a while that has a history to it and plugging into it and then having your new experiences. So it was sort of the attraction of all of this to sort of take it in and it became part of your into your social fabric and your friends who you would see at shows and you would plan when you're going to go see them next. And so there was this whole communal, less communal hippie and more like communal community where like you all had something in common that you really sort of felt like when the music hit and everything's just like wow, this is really cool. You could look around and just see the people having like this same awesome experience and then sort of, and again we were outsiders, right? So this was not mainstream. You were almost like it was like counterculture. You even still in 85 you were like, I wouldn't say outcasts, but you were definitely not part of the mainstream when this all started.
So these were like the nerdy kids, like what was it's just anyone who didn't fit in with like what the football, like what is the mainstream? Like the football player people? Like what do we
Yeah, like the mainstream probably be mainstream music, pop music and stuff like that. And the other thing is, I think, like I said, our high school, the football players were at the games, at the shows. This was sort of a very different kind of typical thing. But I think like there was a sticker that people would just sort of stick on people at the concert that said we are everywhere. And it was always interesting because you could be in some random place and it could be a surgeon who's like, oh my God, that he's a surgeon and he's a deadhead. That's like the craziest thing. So it could be any walk of life, but there was something unique and different about them in their community. This was sort of like a secret life that they had, in addition to sort of like their straight, I'm a surgeon or I'm a lawyer or I'm a whatever. I also see the dead when they're in town. That's kind of like the other aspect to their personalities.
It's interesting because it's kind of like a secret society, but it's also kind of like a country club. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like secret members of something, but then anyone can join. But then you all are nice to each other. It's like a secret thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it seems very accepting. Like, it seems like no one was ever like, "Oh, you can't be a deadhead," or like, "You can't," right?
Everybody was welcome. I mean, basically, the rule of thumb is just don't be a dick. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, at the end of the day, that was kind of like the only rule. Uh, but otherwise, very accepting group of people. Everybody could kind of find their people in there. Yeah, so there was that big community part. But then as you get to discover the music, as you've been doing, there's so many layers to it musically that like you need to become familiarized with the songs before you can really explore the intricate deepness that's going on. Like I saw you listening to some of the stuff for the first time. Like you listen to Terrapin and you're like, wow, I'm not sure where this was going, but I'm starting to understand the structure of the song. And then when you hear one live, it's not as clean, it's not as precise, but you have enough familiarity that you can now start focusing on the other aspects that are going on, the interplay between without getting too focused on what's the plot. You can just sort of experience what's
Yeah,
happening.
I agree. And the same things happened with even like, I just discovered Phish, right? Like this year, like it was in like September, right? So it's been almost a year. And the same thing, when I first heard it, I was like, what is this? And I just had to like, it was just so obscure. But then every time I hear another recording of the same thing, I remember the other one, and then I go, oh, they did this differently, or that's different, or that. So then if you don't have the skeleton, that's why coming
Yeah,
in as a complete newbie, and then as I'm seeing, as you've seen in some of my comments, some people are so religious about the band that like it gets to the point where it's like I think it replaced their religion. I mean, maybe at the time the
oh,
country was getting less religious and people clung to the dead as their religion, and Jerry Garcia became like a god figure or something. Like, do you think that's
totally.
partially
Yeah,
true?
it became a very important part of, because you've got certain belief system, there's a whole spiritual element to it, because music does resonate in certain ways and triggers your brain in certain ways, and music plays a part in religions, so it's not all that odd that like sort of a communal, community-based musical situation is going to hit people in a spiritual way, and that's going to become a very important part of their lives. I mean, some of my very, very best friends in the world I know through this community. My best friend in college, and I'll get to the rest of the story, but my freshman year in college, so I went to UCLA, and suddenly I could see the Dead all the time because they'd probably play 4 or 5 runs of shows in the Bay Area every year and at least 2 different runs of shows in LA. So that's kind of how I hit my 100 number, was like I could just go see them in LA for 3 shows 3 times a year, or just go up to the Bay Area and see them, every couple months. But one of my best friends to this day, I met him. I was like freshman year at UCLA, 1986, and I had this class, and every day when I go to this class, there was a red scooter with the dancing skeletons bumper sticker on it. And because it was not a mainstream thing, I'm like, I should meet this guy. It's a deadhead. And I finally left him a note and said, hey, my name's Jeff, blah, blah, blah. I'm a deadhead too. It'd be fun to like listen, trade tapes or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, he gets back to me. And to this day, this is one of my best friends in the world. And, we've seen a ton of shows together. We've gone up to Northern California to see, Jerry Garcia band on the Eel River, and just had all these road trips and adventures together. But this is what sort of brought us together. It was like a part of our lives.
Okay, then that's perfect segue into my next section, because it basically, one of the questions is, how many shows do you think you've attended?
If I'm including Jerry Garcia band shows, um, and there were a couple, there was a band called Go Ahead, which was like, it was Bobby, Billy, and Brent. It was just like the three of them during when the Dead weren't touring. I'd seen them a few times, probably about 100 times. I've got friends with great memories who know could tell me every show they've been to, and they pull out their Dead bass and they can tell me that there's a big book that has all the concerts. And there'd be new editions that would come out of your physical printed thing that you'd have to like mail in for, and they'd mail it to you. And it was like a database of all the shows, and like they'd highlight the shows they went to. I don't have such a memory. I'm not as blessed with that kind of memory. But I remember counting at one point. It was about 100 shows.
Wow. Okay. And which of these were like? Do you have any that are specifically memorable? Like ones
Yeah,
like, and I'd love to hear about those. Like,
yeah. So there was one we went to see. We went to see them in Calaveras County, California, at a venue called Mountain Air. And I'm going to actually, while we're doing this, I'm going to look it up because I want to see Mountain Air, Grateful Dead. Um, it was one of those sort of standout shows. I actually, oh, here we go. Mountaineer Music Festival, August 22nd, 23rd, 1987, at the Calaveras County Fairgrounds, featuring David Lindley and the El Rayo X Band and Carlos Santana. So there were three acts. And I remember, and they played "Good Morning Little Schoolgirl," which was something that Pigpen, like in 68, 69, and 70 used to sing, and then like they never did it really again. And Carlos came out and played it with them, and they also did Midnight Hour and a few other things that they hadn't played in a long time. Um, and I also remember, and this could be in part due to some chemical augmentation, but I do remember, like, I love the song Estimated Profit, and I never really thought about what the words meant. And somebody once, like, right before the show, had mentioned to me kind of what the concept is. Some guy thinks he's a prophet and knows what's going on, and blah, blah. And that night they played it, and I'm like, wow, I totally get this song. It like clicked, the whole concept made sense, and it was a great version. What's interesting is sometimes you can go to a show and have a great time and think it's a great show and listen to the tape and it's kind of meh. Or you could go to a show and be like, oh my God, I thought that was terrible, blah, blah, and then you listen to the tape and it was great. I've gone back and listened to the tape on this and I'm like, yeah, it stands up. Like to this day, I listen to that version. It was a really good one.
also sounds like a crazy lineup that could only have happened once in history. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
that
Santana
was a
and
unique
like
one.
it's like what? Like it's just nowadays that would never happen. You know?
Yeah,
There's just
yeah.
too many people, there's too many headliners, and I guess the downside of the internet is that people know too much, right? Like the fact that it was kind of underground, you had to know somebody.
Yeah, that was a big, and there's a big, people like to feel that they're part of something exclusive, even if it's incredibly inclusive by nature. There's kind of something special and fun about being part of this thing that what the straight world doesn't really know about. It's all kind of underground scene. And that changed a lot while I was going to shows, sort of like my first half of UCLA, it was like, it was still big, but it wasn't like out of control. And then how it was awesome when In the Dark came out and Touch of Grey was a huge hit. It was like this sort of validation that the stuff we've been doing it really is legit. But the vibe changed, and I went from I used to go to all three shows every chance I got to what after 90 91 by the 90s I'd go to one out of three shows. I just didn't have the energy to go to like all the shows, and because like there'd be more people outside the show than inside the show. There were shows that were canceled or because the crowds outside were out of control. And in fact, if you watch that documentary, the one that's on Prime, that's like, I don't know, 6 parts or something like that. It's it's actually a really sad story. The Garcia storyline is really sad, and the whole scene, something just kind of got too big. There were great venues that they just couldn't play anymore. They have to play really huge, ginormous places, which were fun for what they were, but there was something cool about going to like a place where you could be up on the lawn or you could be down in the seats, and it just had a lot more intimacy to it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense why there are gatekeepers because those of you who saw the shift, right? Like it's like, oh, well, when that happened, then everything went bad after that, you know? So it's like the next thing we need is some big wave of people coming here and ruining it for us, you know? So that's kind of it's the gatekeeper, right? They're Karens, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, well, and the
uh,
irony is that when we started going, like I know there were people who had gone in the 70s who were like, you know what, I just can't go anymore. These kids in the
yeah.
80s, you know, it's just already gotten too big for us.
Yeah. Okay. So then what was the typical process for going and getting to shows? Like, so maybe describe when you would go to the one, well, you already kind of described going to Philadelphia, but then even if you go to the Bay Area, were you guys camping? Were you driving and coming back? Like, what was the situation?
Yeah, so it's funny. It was all situational. Like sometimes you'd drive a long, long drive and you'd basically sleep in your car or in tents. And if it were like a big outdoor venue in the middle of nowhere, it was really easy. You could just camp out there. Um, Sometimes, you know, you'd like I'd fly up to the Bay Area and I'd stay with friends of mine in San Francisco, and then we'd take the BART over to Oakland and see the shows and then come back that night. In fact, I've got one of my other really good friends. He used to work for Bill Graham Productions, and so he had a bunch of people, a bunch of contacts in that world. And his thing was he'd always be able to get tickets, but his rule was you had to make the effort and try every effort you could to get tickets before he'd hook you up. And so the big show every year was the New Year's show. You know, they'd play for hours, they'd have opening acts, which they usually didn't have. And it was the toughest ticket to get. So one year I'd gone up to the Bay Area to go see shows with Jimmy and some friends. And, you know, the big sort of novelty tickets, they were these giant, beautiful tickets, you know, a lot different than the little kind of crappy mail order tickets you'd get. And so we get to the Oakland Coliseum and we're in line, and like the line sort of curled up the hill to the top of the thing. And so we get about halfway up that line and I go, "Oh shit, Jimmy, my ticket's sitting on your counter in your kitchen back in San Francisco." So he grabs me by the arm. We go all the way down. We go to there's a little booth, a little sort of will call office booth. And he knocks on the door opens, he goes in. He comes out about 15 seconds later with this little scrap of paper with the stamp of a cat on it. And he goes, "Here's your ticket for tonight." I'm like, okay. And we get up to the top and I hand him this thing thinking there's no way. And they just let me in. And I realized, wow, he really is the ticket guru. That was amazing.
Wow, that would have like stressed me out so much. That's like forgetting your passport or something.
It's
It's
it
like,
was the worst feeling. It sucked.
yeah.
That's the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah, but then for the rest of your life, you're always like, tickets, check, you know, you always go over that and then you check 7 times. That's like me
Yes.
with
And
like
there's a
my
whole routine.
passport. I check my passport like 7 times before I travel. I'm like, wait, do I have my passport? I'm like, I just check. Is it still in my bag? Yes. It's like once
Totally.
you forget something once.
And that's part of the routine. So I remember we'd gone to shows. I'd gone with a friend of mine, probably sophomore year, and we drove up to a place called Laguna Seca Raceway. And it was during finals, if I remember correctly. So I really shouldn't have been going, but I said, you know, it's 2 nights. I'm only going to go to one of them. And I also brought my books because of course I'm going to be studying at the show. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking, but I brought my books because it was finals. And it was Bruce Hornsby opened. There was someone else, and it will come to me, and then it was the Dead. And so we left that night after the first show, only to learn that at around 2 a.m. they woke up everybody in the parking lot, let everybody back in, and recorded the Touch of Grey video with the skeleton puppets as well as the band, you know, that whole thing. And that was all done at 2 in the morning in between the two shows. I'd gone to the first and then left. So it was one of those, oh God, was that final that important that I had to miss them doing this video?
Oh, so the famous music video is filmed there. And
It
it
was
was that
filmed,
that
yeah.
night and they did it at 2 in the morning. Like when it was
Yeah.
quieter, I guess, or
I think it was just a thing to do. They figured, you know what, we've got an audience right there. We can get them to show up in a moment's notice, and let's just make it happen. And so that's where they did it.
well, I saw that video and there weren't that many audience people filmed. I mean, you know, it was mostly the band, so you probably wouldn't
Yeah,
have been in it anyway. You know what I mean?
that's right.
Like I didn't really notice anyone in the audience on that. It was mostly the band. Okay, and so then tell me about the scene, shakedown, whatever. Like, what was that a
Yeah.
thing then? Was it better, worse? Was it different? Has it
So at
morphed?
the beginning, it was very kind of unorganized, and sometimes you could get busted for selling stuff, and like if it was using their copyrights, maybe there'd be issues. Like they were always cool about the taping, and I'm sure you've heard about this, is that there was a taper section. So when you ordered your tickets, you could request the taper section because that's where the forest of microphone stands would be up there, and you couldn't talk. I mean, you did not sit in the taper section and talk to your buddy or sing along to the song. Everybody just shut the hell up and recorded. But for the vending, a lot of people, that's how they paid their way to go from show to show for real, like gas money and all that stuff. And so they, buy food at the grocery store and make sandwich or whatever and sell it, or they do shirts and sell it. This buddy of mine, the ticket guy, he was a graphic artist, and he had these great, great t-shirts, and we'd see that the ones that he'd sell, and we'd see them all over. And every now and then, maybe he'd get like them confiscated in the parking lot. And then there was a point where they realized, you know what? Let's get our arms around this and organize it and make it a little less chaotic. And then they started setting up kind of official areas where the shakedown street would happen, and then everything kind of got, and I'm not trying to poo-poo on it, it's just how things work, got more commercialized. I mean, I was just at the Sphere a couple months ago, and they've got their Shakedown Street, which is like going to a convention hall or whatever, where everybody's kind of got their booth set up, and there was cool stuff there, but it's not the same kind of ad hoc experience of just some random person walking by you with something that they had made. Yeah, you could buy pretty much anything in the parking lot.
Yeah, no, that almost sounds like a Disneyland. I haven't been this year yet, but I was there in Vegas. The one of the weekends. I was just in Vegas a few weeks ago. So it was one of the Sphere Grateful Dead weekends, and so I saw Deadheads just like that year before I saw the weekend.
Yeah.
That's when the whole Phish thing started for me because it was like two things. It was like we were in Vegas and I was just with my girlfriends and we're very like, oh my God, let's go to the pool party, like very basic, like, whatever. And then we see all these like middle-aged white guys and we're like, what's going on? Like, why are there so many like middle-aged white dads here, And then we're like, oh, it's Phish, And then the exact same demographic. Actually, Dead and Company had a younger demographic. So I saw more millennials at Dead and Company than at Phish. It's like everyone at Phish is between 46 and 55, like average plus or minus
Yeah.
5, right? But like every person is a male between 56, no, he's like, yeah, 47 to 55, basically. And that's like everyone you see in a Phish concert. And then Dead and Company, I saw women and I saw millennials and I was like, oh, it's like a big, broader fan base.
It is. I think the Dead is for a couple reasons. I think Dead and Company, John Mayer brought in a bunch of people, as a side note about John Mayer, uh, he said something really interesting in an interview once. He said that he thinks by being part of Dead and Company and playing to the Dead fans, he became a better guitarist because he used to go on there and everything had to be perfect, right? Like he was a perfectionist. He didn't ever want to get a note wrong. And you're a musician, you get it. When you're really trying to just nail it, you don't take a lot of risks. You just focus on just getting it perfectly. And he discovered that a big part of the Dead audience is very forgiving because they know the upside could be a lot bigger. And that's what John Mayer discovered was as soon as he got over his fear of fucking up, he could try things and suddenly discover that he hit like these moments that he never would have discovered had he been just really focused on just not fucking up.
Yeah, well, I think that would be a really hard job to step into. Like, to
And there's that,
basically
yeah.
replace one of the most, like, famous and prolific guitarists of all time that is dead. Like, that's kind of, like, a
Yeah.
major thing. That would stress me out. Just imagine being like, imagine if they had to keep the Beatles going and they're like, well, who do we have to replace John Lennon? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, it was impossible, which is why the Beatles ended, which is
Yeah.
sad. I actually am now reacting to all the Beatles albums, and as I listen to them, I'm like crying. Like I just think about, I'm like, what if John Lennon hadn't been killed? You know what I mean? Like I just thought that crossed my mind because they were on such a path, and then it's like, what if that hadn't happened? You know what I mean? Do you ever
Yeah.
think about that with like, what if Jerry Garcia hadn't been diabetic, or like, what if he hadn't gotten sick, or what if they hadn't gotten addicted to drugs? Like, do you ever think about that? Like, what could
You know,
have,
it's
you
funny.
know?
Just the other day, I'm driving and I'm thinking, all right, if Garcia, because I'm thinking like, okay, Phil's gone, and the guy, they're all getting older, and if Garcia was still around, like, how would he sound? Would it still be good? Would he still be playing? And I just found myself wondering, like, and you have no way of knowing what. I mean, and the scene was on such a tough trajectory that, like, who knows what that could they have pulled it out
I
and
don't
and
know,
and gotten their head around
but
it?
I just saw Bob Dylan a few weeks ago at Hollywood Bowl because he was playing with the
Yeah,
Outlaw, and Willie Nelson's also really old, and I didn't know how old because my mom is I guess my parents are like 68 now, 67, and I thought Bob Dylan was maybe closer to their age, and she's like, no, he's like 80. I was like, what? I was
yeah,
like, are you kidding
yeah.
me? I was like, because he was singing, and I was like, well, like maybe 75. They're like, no, he's over 80. I was like, are you joking? So that's what I'm saying. Like, how many of these musicians can really keep touring when they're 80? So wouldn't he be nearly 80 now if Jerry Garcia
Oh
was
yeah,
alive?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of a
He'd be over
fantasy.
80.
Yeah, no, it's a fan.
Yeah,
It's like some men, some people can perform over 80, but not many people.
yeah. I mean,
Like,
have you seen the Stones?
I have not seen them recently. Are they still? How is it?
It's ridiculous the energy that
Okay.
Jagger has. He doesn't stop moving the entire time.
Okay. I
Like
haven't seen any
he
of
is
their recent clips, so because I didn't go see them. I know they keep touring, so I'm like, oh, someone's buying tickets.
people buy tickets. We saw them in Paris about 6 years ago, and he didn't stop moving the entire time. He is this little sort of he's teeny. That's the other thing because you see someone on stage, you think they're like this huge thing. He is this little wiry, spry guy who just keeps moving.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah, the
for octogenarians and nonagenarians, I think they just have to stay really thin and active, and
yeah,
then they can be fine. It's when people get heavy or they lose mobility, and that's when they take a quick decline. But that sounds about
absolutely.
right. That if he's like really
Yeah.
light and tiny, like he's one of these like 5'6" guys, like
He's like the Energizer Bunny. He could just go forever.
I love it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's great. Because again, I mean, whatever. Like the Willie Nelson concert made me cry because he sang some song, and I was like talking about what do like why would you stop? Like what are you gonna do if you stop? It was kind of like yeah, like if you just give up when you get older, you're just gonna die. Like you might as well go for it. Like with
I think that's what
everything.
keeps these guys going because everyone's like, well, why are they doing it? They don't need the money. It's like they're not doing it for the money. I mean, Paul McCartney's going to go until he can't go anymore, until he feels that he can't do it anymore.
Ringo's on tour right now. My parents are
Ringo's on
going.
tour.
Ringo's on tour.
Oh
My
yeah,
mom, yeah, my parents were like, we're seeing Ringo in September. Yeah, he's
he
coming to
puts on a
California.
great show. We saw him. We lived in Paris for 3 years, and I took my son to go see Ringo and his all-star band, and it was really cool. Yeah,
I
it's a
think
lot
it's
of fun.
great, but that's what I'm saying. We only have two Beatles left. They might as well keep going. And but
Yeah,
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
crazy, just like how all these circumstances happening. Okay, so then what happened? Like I want to hear now what happened towards the end because what I don't know about the Dead is what are all these side bands? When did they break up? Did they get back together? What was the drama? And
Yeah,
then what happened how did Jerry Garcia die? And was it a shock? Like I don't know any of this. Like how it all like,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
So,
I'm like ready with popcorn now.
the dead were just cranking along, doing their thing. They were, however many shows a year. They were the number one touring act out there in terms of revenues for like the last 5 years. That like nobody made more money on the road than the Dead. And when I first went off to UCLA in '86, I guess. Garcia went into this diabetic coma and they had to cancel the tour. And so we were all kind of freaked out like this actually might be the end of it, right? I mean, this was a big deal in the community. And then he got better and started touring again and it was like, wow, that's amazing. And then sort of Touch of Grey and all that stuff happened coming out of that. So that they came out of almost being gone to being as big as they'd ever been and ever would be. And one of the things you'll learn about in that documentary is so everybody knew Garcia had a drug problem and everybody knew that he wasn't healthy and it would sort of ebb and flow. He'd get into a good place, and there'd be a few years where like he'd be in great shape, his energy would be amazing. Um, and then it started to decline. I remember going to a Jerry Garcia band show in the Bay Area with my buddy Jimmy, and the second set was like four, maybe five songs, and then that was it. And it wasn't, and it was kind of sloppy and messy. Like, you're excited to be there, but if you're really paying attention, you're just like, this is not the best. This is just, he's just not on. And I think, he could still pull it out when he needed to, but the shows weren't as good. And and so in I guess 95, in August of 95, they had just finished a tour. And I was living in DC at the time. And my dad calls one morning and says, "Hey, did you hear the news?" I said, "Yeah, Netscape went public today. They did their IPO." My dad said, "No, Garcia died." And that was like, it was shocking, but not surprising, if that makes sense, because it just sort of hits you like a freight train. Uh, but it's not like, oh my God, who could have seen this? I mean, it's like, shit, we got as many years as we could out of him.
And was it an
And
overdose or a heart attack or
no,
what?
he had gone, yeah. So it's really, it's ridiculous, but like that last tour, he died in August, and the last tour ended in July in Chicago, actually, at Soldier Field. And he went into rehab,
Oh, okay.
and he had a heart attack one night while in rehab at
Like in
this
withdrawal,
place.
basically.
Yeah. And what's crazy about it is, everybody knew it. And when you watch this documentary, one of the things that comes up is, look, there was a lot of money. Like I tell you, it was the number one grossing touring act in the world, and they had a big company of people that they needed to take care of. And there was this pressure to keep going, keep going, keep going. And so there's a lot of hand wringing about, oh, should they have just stopped the tour and told Garcia, look, you're not well, you got to take care of this. But then they said, yeah, if we had stopped the tour and done that, he would have just gone and done a bunch of shows with Jerry Garcia band. So there was no, so there's this,
Okay. So he was
but it just,
addicted to the performing as well.
it was just him. And it's what he did. And he loved going out there and doing that, even with all the difficulty. But yeah, there was, I think, a lot of pressure to sort of keep this machine running because of the amount of people who would be impacted if it stopped, and the amount of money, it was making.
Right, 'cause they had to pay all the stagehands and the travel people and the drivers and
And they had a
everybody
big
to
crew,
get,
and
yeah.
people who had been with them since the 60s. It was like the family. And like when they went to Europe in 72, they brought like all these people and their families as part of the deal. I mean, that's like they brought over, I think there was like 54 people or something as part of the organization that they brought on this tour.
Okay, so and then do they know, like, was he addicted to like cocaine and heroin, or like what was this
I think
everything?
heroin. No, I mean, I'm sure they've all ebbed and flowed through their different stuff. But I'm my take is that it was sort of heroin was like the big thing at the end. And
Uh-huh. It's crazy.
yeah, and in
It's
fact, you
sad.
you showed. And in the 70s, I think the Coke was a big thing. And the 78 US Blues that you played,
Yeah.
where he's like
Yeah.
screaming and he's doing like
Yeah.
like Pete Townsend when
Yeah.
no one has ever seen. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
normal. That was like a standout kind of performance that I've sent around. We've all shared that
Okay.
with each other over the years because we're like,
He
holy
did seem
shit.
way more
Yeah,
energetic than normal because he's usually kind of just like chill
just
and
sits
kind
there and
of
does his
yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, and what I noticed is that again, like how nowadays, and at least I grew up. I was born in '85, so I'm growing up in the '90s, the 2000s, and then we look at pictures from the '70s, and we're like, everyone was so thin back then, and even in the '80s, right? And so then that's
yeah.
why I'm like, my comment on Jerry Garcia in the '70s was that he was already chubby, but no one else looked like that. But today he would look normal. Like I'm saying,
You're totally right.
yeah,
Yes.
like his weight on stage at the time, but then I looked at all the people who were in that video where they're at that, I don't know, festival, and everyone in the audience is like, no, none of the guys are wearing shirts. They're all with six packs. They're so skinny, and then the
Yeah.
whole band is skinny, and then he's like kind of heavy, and I guess that's the diabetes. because no one was
Yeah.
big back then like that.
Yeah. It's real. That's a crazy observation. You're totally right. To look at the audience and see what people looked like back in the day,
We have
and they were
memes like
skinny
that.
as
Yeah,
rails.
we have memes like that where they'll be like, here was a beach in LA in the 70s or in like 82, and it's like everybody's so thin. And then it's like just a little bit later, all of America got so fat. So obviously something got wrong. It's just weird that it happened and then no one did anything about it. Like that we just let, I don't know if it's the corporations. I think it's the processed foods, honestly,
It's
because
totally, yeah.
we just didn't have like you guys didn't have packaged things. Like you guys didn't have like granola bars and stuff, right? Like it was
Not
like
not like what we've got today. There wasn't just like constant ability to have packaged food that you could just eat. And you didn't really eat. You had breakfast, you had lunch, maybe you had a snack in the afternoon
yeah.
after school, and you had dinner, and that was just and we were
Yeah.
out. Here's the other thing that's really wild, not to go into one
No,
of these back in the
I
days.
love the back in the day because this is what people we will one day this will be like old, right? Like wow, we talked to someone who was in high school in the 80s and it's gonna be like so
Right.
long ago, right? So
When
trust
we
me,
were
it's worth knowing.
kids, you went out. I mean, you just went out and just played on the street with your friends and rode your bikes everywhere and just sort of it was really weird if you were inside either I mean there was something going on that had you inside. It wasn't like you just sat home all the time. Like we were always outside and it was like when it got dark or when the street lights go on, there's always a thing that's like that's when you go home. The other thing is the parents, like no one knew where anybody was. You went and you did your thing, and you knew I had to be back at this certain point, and then you did it. It was very different than today. You didn't have to schedule exercise or activity. Like your life was activity.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, definitely, I think the kids are worse off today. I think you may be, people would argue like your exact age is probably like the best, the last of the best time to be alive. Like, because aren't you like
Yeah.
you're like one of the first Gen X. Like you're probably like,
So I was
right?
born '68.
Yeah. So
So
you're
yeah.
like
So
basically like Gen X starts 65. You're like right there.
yeah.
I think you guys had like a good situation. Like you guys had like a good time to be alive.
We talk.
America
It's
was
funny. I
pretty
talk to
good.
other Gen Xers, and we're like, God, we were really lucky. Like we wouldn't trade our childhood for what these kids are dealing with today for anything. I don't care about the phones or the apps or any of this stuff. Like it was just fun and free, and there was a little bit of sense of the unknown and danger, but in a safe way, right? Like I think that's kind of part of what that whole dead experience was too. Was it was a way to kind of go on on an adventure or on a journey. And while sure there were bad things did happen, car accidents did happen, and ODs happened, I mean, bad things definitely happened. But on a whole, you could just sort of go do this adventure. And it was in this community that people did look out for each other, and it was a special, unique sort of little moment in time.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, even for me, I think you guys had it better. I'm at least the millennial that had it. Like I didn't have a phone till I was 15, but I wasn't allowed to use it. It was like one that had like the frog, and like I had to keep it off, and I just used it to call my mom to
So
pick me up.
emergencies to call home
That's
or
it. But that
whatever.
was like at the end of high school, and then I didn't even get. We didn't have Facebook until college, which was good because like
Yeah.
our high school had no social media, and I'm like, thank God. But we also had September 11th happen when I was in high school, right? So when I'm like 15, I'm like waking up one morning, and I'm just like, oh, terrorist attack, right? Because that really changed America. I feel like I think prior to the 2001, America was in this like golden era where like nothing could happen to us. We were untouchable. Everything was, we didn't feel worried about anything. And then I think like that 2001, just a lot really shifted there. So like I felt
It
great
huge,
until
yeah.
then. So yeah, you just being a little older than me, it's like you got to really enjoy your whole childhood, get into your early career, and then finally it's like, oh, September 11th, but you were already like a working adult by then.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
like, okay, like yeah, but for us it was like, oh wow, that's kind of a downer, and then it's like everything changed after that. It's just, I didn't really see it until I looked back later. Like at the
And
time I
you
didn't
have
see
to,
it.
you can't,
Yeah.
when it's happening with any of this stuff, you don't really have a sense of the implication. What does this all mean? What's the change that's going to happen? Like you just don't know because you're experiencing it firsthand. And it's not till you look back and you're like, wow, I can't get on an airplane without taking off my shoes and feeling a little uncomfortable that they're looking at me, and if I make a joke about something, I might get pulled. I mean, like that was never a thing. Like I took pride in showing up for flights 10 minutes before my flight because you could just go right in,
People used to
right? Like,
greet you at the gate. That I
oh
remember.
yeah,
I have pictures of
totally.
like my cousins pick me up at the airport and they're like at the gate. And like if you show that to a kid now, they'd be like, "What? How did you get to the gate?" It's like it
Right.
was a different time. It's like it's hard to I think those were the best of times. Definitely. And then I don't know, but that's why I mean Gen X did so much for America because all of the tech companies were founded by
Yep.
Gen X, it's like Amazon, Google, well, not Facebook because that's a millennial like me. Well, Mark
Right.
Zuckerberg's my age, but the other ones are all Gen X. Like it's basically Google is founded by Gen X, so it's like that's the whole tech thing. So a lot of people would be like, "Oh, you guys ruined America," but but we
Well, we
say the
didn't realize it
boomers.
at the time when we
Yeah,
were doing
yeah,
it.
you didn't know. I was just trying to make money. No, it's fine. Okay, so then, oh, this is some of these questions I got from ChatGPT. Actually, I was like,
All right, let's
this is
hear
how
them.
you work smarter. How do you feel about the post Jerry iterations of the band?
Awesome question. So, I would go begrudgingly. I remember like I went and saw I think the first iteration was called The Other Ones, and I remember seeing them, and it was everybody but Jerry. I think Hornsby may have been there also, and the the absence of Garcia was deafeningly loud. That void. It was crazy. Like you didn't hear the guitar sound and just kind of like not just the tone but the phrasings. You just didn't hear that. And he was really the center of gravity. And so as a result, it just felt disorganized, right? Like I mean, everybody was having fun and we're out and blah blah, but like musically it just didn't land for me. And so I would go to each one of these. I'd go to like one show, or maybe I'd skip a year. I'd go and it'd be like, you know what? It's nice to see my friends and it's nice to hear the music played live because these songs are awesome. And one thing you're going to learn as you start going through the whole catalog is not only is it a huge catalog, but the more you listen to it, the more it lands with you. It has more meaning. So just I'll be at a bar, and if a band is playing a cover of like Bertha or something, I'll just stop whatever I'm doing and just go listen to the band because just these are great songs and they're fun to hear live. But for the post Garcia stuff, I guess Dead and Company. I went and saw the Fare Thee Well shows. I don't know if you know about this, but so for the 50th anniversary of the Grateful Dead, they did three shows. The band got back together with a bunch of other people, including Hornsby. Trey Anastasio played lead, and they did three shows in Chicago that summer, and they sold out like that. So the weekend before, they scheduled two in San Jose at the Levi's Center
Yeah,
or whatever it is,
49ers, yeah.
and so we went to all five of those shows. It was again, it was sort of like a throwback because we did Grateful Dead ticket sales where you filled out the envelopes. I mean, that's kind of how we tried to get our tickets and mailed them in and colored the envelopes like we used to do, hoping that they would be pulled from the pack, because they looked so beautiful and so colorful. And musically, it was fine, but like you said about John Mayer, Trey was just sort of like dropped in there. And he didn't like show up with, I mean, he wasn't like given this sort of authority or didn't earn this. So he didn't have the ability to wrangle them all too. He was just one of a whole bunch of things. So it really wasn't until Dead and Company, probably after a few years of them playing together, because they've, I guess, played together for 10 years now, that there's a center of gravity when you go see them. And I think that, so yeah, I'd say that out of all of them, the Dead and Company's been for me the most, and then Phil and Friends. So Phil Lesh
Okay.
kind of went off and did his own thing with his son and with some friends, and he'd do shows too. I'd enjoy those. It wasn't trying to be a Dead thing. It was just Phil playing Dead music with his friends, and that was super fun. But as far as like a Dead thing with multiple bands in it, I think Dead and Company is probably the one I enjoyed the most musically.
Well, I bought the ticket for the 3-day Dead and Company San Francisco. So
That's
I
going to be a blast.
right. So now I think for the next segment of my channel, because now that I have a lot of Dead, not a lot, but I have like a number of Dead songs under my belt, the next chapter is going to be how do I use these 2 months to prepare myself to have the best time where I can just be like, oh, I recognize that. I want to be able to recognize it enough so I'm not just like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Because you know how when I
Yeah.
first heard Terrapin Station, I'm like, what's going on? It was just like, I want to be like, oh, I recognize that. So I need to basically get the list of like, here's the most likely things they're going to play over the 3 days. And I have to like cram them in a way.
So here's what I
Or what do you
so
think? Do you
here's
think that's wrong? Like, what do you think is
no,
a
no.
better
I think
strategy?
I think you're dead on, pun intended, I guess. Because I think you want to go in familiar with stuff. And the way to do it, I think, is, I mean, in the same way that we're having this conversation linearly, I think you can explore the dead linearly because what sort of happened was there are these eras, with all due respect to Taylor Swift. You've got these dead eras, and each one of them kind of, even though it might be different than the last one, it sort of builds and then it gets synthesized and their sound kind of evolves. And so, you've got the early 60s that sounded like stereotypical 60s type stuff, 60s sort of pop, but then it got really kind of like the intense kind of a combination of kind of acid rock, hardcore blues with Pigpen, like the Live Dead double album. You probably listened
But who's
to.
Pigpen? Everyone keeps saying Pigpen. Who's
Oh,
Pigpen?
okay. So
So there's
when
like
the
things I
band
don't know.
started, sorry, yeah. So when the band started, and this is kind of a crazy story, but like the way the band started was, I guess Bob Weir. It was like Christmas or New Year's Eve or something, and he was out with friends, kind of fucking around in Palo Alto. He was like a 16-year-old kid, and they went by this music store and they heard like banjo coming out of the music store, and so they went in there, and it was Garcia. He was teaching music on the side, and he was waiting for his student. Didn't realize it was New Year's and that the kid was never going to show up, and so they jammed for a while, and then they pulled sort of the precursor to the Dead together, and one of the guys was Pigpen, who was a local kind of blues singer, and he was like the star of the band. Like he was the one who had the stage presence. He was the one who went in there and had this voice. He would do a rap where he'd be singing a song and then suddenly be talking and telling a whole story in the middle of the song, and that was kind of the thing. And then as they started getting more exploratory with like the drugs and the psychedelic stuff, that really wasn't his trip. So they'd kind of have their psychedelic thing. And then there'd be certain Pigpen songs, like "Good Lovin'" was a big Pigpen song that he'd do. "Midnight Hour" was a big one, and you can find some great ones. I'm happy to send you some links. And then the Dead, sort of the other thing that's worth noting is, how like they'll go on stage and start tuning. Like people find that really weird. Like there's not like an announcement. They'll just like walk on stage and then they'll just sit there for like 2 minutes and work on their stuff. A big part of that came from the fact that they really happened at the time when, I don't know, did you ever see One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or read the book? It's by a guy named Ken
I've
Kesey.
heard of it. I haven't actually.
Okay. So there, back in the 60s, before LSD was illegal, the government was researching it. Like the CIA
I
was
know they put it
researching it.
in bread in France.
They
There was
put it
like,
in bread in France.
yeah, wasn't there like a famous like CIA thing where they did like they like drugged an entire town? You haven't heard about this?
I would know, but I wouldn't be surprised at all
They
because what
did.
they were
You read about it. They basically like
that's
they put LSD in the bread because everyone in France buys bread, and they basically
yep.
then observe this town over like the day.
Yeah, that's super ethical. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. So yeah, so they had so these guys were like Stanford was doing a study. The military was doing it through Stanford, and they would pay people whatever they'd pay them to come in for the afternoon, and they'd dose them, and they'd just observe them for like several hours. And one of them was Ken Kesey. One of them was Timothy Leary. I think Robert Hunter, Garcia's lyricist, who's officially part of the band. That's how important he was to the band. That as a lyricist, he was considered part of the band. They all went through this, and so what did they? They thought this is world changing. Like this will change the world, and so they stole a bunch of it. And
From the test center where they
from the
were.
test center, they
Okay.
stole a bunch of the LSD, and they would throw these parties called acid tests, and they'd spike the Kool-Aid with acid. You'd pay your $2 to get in. You'd get a cup. They'd project all kinds of crazy stuff on the walls, and the Dead were the house band,
Hmm.
and they would come in, and they'd get high, and they were just part of it. It wasn't like people were there to see the Dead. They just happened to be part of the whole show. Like everybody was part of the show because everybody was tripping out on LSD. And so it was just this experience. And so the Dead might go in and play for 3 hours nonstop, or they might play for 3 minutes and be like, whoa, we're too high, and not play for the rest of the night. And there was no expectation. It literally was what it was going to be. And that was kind of the mindset. And so that sort of carried over into there's not like a show. They just come out and they do their music, and they see the audience as an integral part of it. And in fact, that's, the studio stuff never really landed the same way as the live stuff because they weren't getting the energy from the audience like they did during the live stuff. But that was sort of a big part of it. And then they they met. I'm sure you've seen videos with Donna Jean Godshaw, the female vocalist who joined the band with her husband, the keyboard player
Hmm.
Keith. So from 72 to 79, Keith and Donna were part of the band. And that's kind of like, for me at least, the golden years. They were like some of my favorite years are during that era. So you've got like 65 to 69. Then you've got like the 1970s when it was they stripped everything down. They did two albums, American Beauty and Working Man's Dead, and it's Americana.
Hmm.
It's like the West. It's like all acoustic or very acoustic, very stripped down, very simplistic production, but beautiful songs. They aren't like 15-minute long explorations. And that became a big part of the catalog that to this day, they still play. So those two albums were kind of treated as one project. Then they went off to Europe, introduced a whole bunch of songs in 72. And that's when they started really kind of turning some of the songs into these big explorations. Like Truckin', maybe when it first started, it was like a 5-minute song. And then suddenly you could hear like 15-minute truckins that just went
Okay.
into space or
See, I haven't
whatever.
heard trucking yet, so I'm gonna have to do a whole like comparison on that one. Like, let me hear
Oh,
the
yeah.
regular one, and then oh, don't hear the studio one first. Hear this one. I'm like, like people are like, don't listen.
So,
Like,
it's funny. I think there's something about a studio version of something that at least you can get the structure. You might hate the production, it might sound kind of funny, the voices might be produced funny, but you get the basic structure of this is the
yes,
story, the beginning, middle, and end of the song. So then when you hear it live and they're really going to town on it, you're
that's
like,
what
I
I
still
think.
hear. Yeah, I
That's
think
what I think
I
because people are like, no, you're not gonna like blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, but then with Terrapin Station, I did it, and I liked that I listened to the studio. Then I heard
yes,
the live, and I think if I start with the 30-minute version of Truckin', I'm just gonna be
it
like,
won't be
what?
accessible.
I just don't think I'm gonna like it. I think I'm gonna like it better if I hear the song and then I hear what are they doing to it. If that
Yeah,
makes sense, because I
that is
understand the variations because I'm a musician. Like I
right.
understand the iterations.
And you're committed to doing this. Like if you were just some rando and someone's like, well, here's what they're about, and you're going to decide yes or no on that song, whether you're ever going to listen to them again, yeah, I might feel a little weird having you listen to a particular studio version of a song that became something else. But if
Hmm.
you're like, I'm doing this exploration and I need to do a little bit of background research before I go dive in, I'd totally listen to the
Yeah. Well,
lives.
probably I can also probably look at the set list from that 50th anniversary you went to, right? And then
Yes.
I can look at the Sphere set lists because I imagine when they do the full weekend
So
at the
they're playing
Sphere.
everything. It's really interesting. They're playing, so Dead and Company is playing stuff like that I never saw the Dead play that they had stopped playing in like early 70s. So it's definitely a big catalog. One thing you did discover too is that in 73, 74, they had a huge creative, like they were on fire, man. They were introducing a whole new set of songs. So the albums that came out during then, like Wake of the Flood and Blues for Allah, both of which you can listen to the studio albums to get familiarized with them. And then there's great live stuff for it. They would travel around with this thing called the Wall of Sound, and I'm sure you've heard
Yes,
about this.
everyone, and I saw it in that video briefly. They're like, I was like, oh, it's an actual wall of sound. It's
It's insane, and and they had two of them because it took so long to take them down, ship them, and build them up. They had two that would leapfrog each other to the next venue to the next venue because they wouldn't have enough time during the course of the week to get that same one moved and up. But it bankrupted them, and so the Dead broke up after there's the thing called the Grateful Dead movie that is a concert that was a series of concerts that was recorded in 74 that were the last concerts. And in fact, at the very end, Mickey Hart, who had left the band because in 71, I think, when his dad embezzled a bunch of money from the band, he was managing the band, embezzled the money. Mickey felt shitty and was like, I'm sorry, guys. And he left. And so he shows up at the end of the Grateful Dead movie for the encore. They set up another drum kit for him and he plays. And then there were like three or four shows in 75 and three or four in 76, but they were kind of done. And it wasn't until 77 that they came back. And the 77, 78 era, it's wonderful. It's very like I'm sure you've noticed the bass player Phil is very front forward and very prominent in the music. He
mm-hmm.
actually didn't know how to play bass. He had never played bass before when Garcia brought him on board. Garcia's like, "We'll teach you to play bass. You got to join this band." And
Mm-hmm.
so he learned to play bass for and in the Grateful Dead. So it doesn't have sort of traditional bass rules applied to it. It's like another lead guitar. And in fact, sometimes you'll be listening to it and you'll be like, "Holy shit, that's the bass. That's not like Garcia in the background doing lead." So anyway, so 77, 78 were big years. 1980, there was their 15th anniversary. They did like 8 shows at Radio City Music Hall and 8 shows at the Warfield, and did 2 double albums. One called Dead Set, and it's electric, but they also did an acoustic set in these shows. And so there's one called Reckoning, and it's a double album of them all acoustic, and it's also available on video. So you can absolutely find these beautifully, produced, like mixed. It just sounds incredible, and it's a really accessible way to meet the Dead, at least what
I'll
they sounded like
probably
in
like
1980.
that. And
You'll love it. It's
I'm
really
not,
good.
I'm actually really local to Palo Alto. So actually, I just thought of something. I can go do a little like, look, here's the bookstore, and I was just looking up the
Yeah.
places. I was like, oh, I could go to these places. I could go to the place where the old music shop used to be, where they met, and I could
Yep.
film in front of it. I also realized I could go on Nextdoor probably and just ask if there's any people who lived here who used to know them, and there's probably are.
Oh,
So
for
yeah,
for
because
sure.
I live in the area, so I might as well. Like I was like, wait a minute, so isn't that even weirder that I've been living here for like 15 years and never listened to a single Grateful Dead song, and it's like right here, like the
It's right in your
bookstore.
backyard.
Yeah, like the restaurant I just saw. There was a coffee shop called St. Michael's Alley. That's a restaurant now, and I've been there. It's a very nice California farm to table type place, but apparently it was a coffee shop where they used to hang out.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I never knew that. And I've been to that restaurant. I pulled it up while you mentioned that they met at a music store in Palo Alto. I was like, really? It was like, where is this music store? Because I could just go and film in front of the same. It's not that shop anymore, but it's still there.
Yeah, you
Like
should
the
definitely go check out some of these spots for sure. And their house in Haight Ashbury is
right. It's the
iconic.
Grateful Dead
And
house, right? Like it's like
yeah.
a yeah. I think I've probably been by there. I've been to the. I mean, I live so close to San Francisco, so I've definitely been to the Haight Ashbury and know all about that whole scene. But yeah, it's so cool. It's like history. It's interesting that it's I like that you're the 80s Deadhead person. You're not one of the 70s ones, so you're much more open. I feel like the people who are the boomers, I think they're the ones that have a lot of like I think they're the gatekeepers.
I think you're probably right because I'm sure when we showed up in the early 80s, they were like, "Who are these little assholes?" And
Yeah.
then it only got worse, and we get kind of associated with them. But hey, you've got people from the who saw them in the '60s and then suddenly in the '70s, they're just like, yeah, too many people. There's
Yeah, yeah.
5,000 people instead of the 800 in this facility now.
Yeah, I think it's cool that now. I mean, look, as much as the internet brings bad things, it's cool that the communities it's built. That there's like all the Facebook groups and there's like Reddit and there's like Dead.net and like it's just cool that you can now find the people who used to have to see a pin or something. It's like, oh, you like the Dead too, and now you can just go on a
Oh
Facebook
yeah,
group, right?
it's just
Like,
all it's all right there.
Yeah, I mean, look at my channel. My channel is alive because the comment section is on fire, and it's not even me. I just make one video, and then it's like the comment section. And that's the thing is that that's what I like. I like that I'm building a community because I have a way that it's easy for me to go in front of a camera. Like it's just really natural skill for me. Like I'm not afraid to like talk
Yeah.
or like go over a camera. A lot of people don't have that, right? So it's like, hey, if I can be someone that just like talks about something and it makes other people want to like type and like talk, and you want to do an interview, like that to me is doing something, right? Like,
It's very cool that you're doing this. When did you start your channel?
okay, so it kind of has a roundabout story to it, but basically, okay, so a year ago, I wrote a little mini album. I wrote 7 songs, and it was a breakup album. I'd gone through this like 6 year relationship. I had this like devastating breakup, and then about 6 months went by from the breakup, and I still just wasn't getting over it. Like I just wasn't okay. And so I was like, I just have to write this album. Like there's nothing I could do. I like thought about it. I was like, what are the pros and cons? How do I anonymize this to like protect everyone? You know, like I'll do everything I can to try to like, I'll delete my social media for whatever, like delete everything from social media, like just whatever. So I wrote this album, and it took a lot of work, but I learned how to do the video editing. I learned how to do the sound production, and it's very makeshift. Like it's not professional. I did it all on my computer. I did it with like low budget equipment. I did it with MIDI instruments often, or just me playing piano. Like it's very basic. And then I was like, I did all this work. I made this YouTube channel, and then I got like 3 views. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then they want you to pay all this money to like advertise. And I was like, okay, so that's it. So to be an indie artist is like, you basically just spend all this money. No one ever listens to your stuff, whatever. And I was like, well, I'll just start a TikTok because maybe people will find me from TikTok, you know? And I was like, I didn't have one yet. I was like, oh, that's for the kids, you know? And then I started like gaining a following on TikTok, and that was just like trying to promote my music. And then I was like, okay, maybe promoting the music isn't going to work. So I was like, maybe I need to have a TikTok about giving advice. Like I can like give advice on dating or something, you know, like, or just talk about breakups, or I don't know. Cause that was like, people watch that a lot. Like that's a channel on YouTube that people watch, you know? I was like,
Really?
yes, it's like a huge thing on TikTok, just it's all I get served on my algorithm. So then that led me to, I made a video about the Phish. I went out with one date with a guy, and he was a Gen X, and he was like a little older than me, like 7 years older than me, or 10 years older, or something. And he's like, "Oh, do you like Phish?" And I was like, "No. Like, why the f would I like?" It's just a weird question to ask. Like, imagine going out with a girl, and it's like the first 10 minutes, and you're like, "Do you like the Dead?" Like, would you do that? Like,
No, I'd wait. I'd wait to hook them in, and then I'd spring the dead thing
no,
on
it was on
them.
a first date, and it was like within the first 30 minutes of the date, "Do you like Phish?" And I was like, no, I don't even like. I'm not from the East Coast. I'm not a male who's a Gen X man. Like, why would I? Like, that's like such
Right.
a statistically like oddball question, like to a woman from the West Coast. So then I made a rant about that. So this is how it all happened, if you want to know. So I made a rant about how what's with the deal with Gen X and how they're obsessed with Phish, and like what is it, and what are like, now that I had this breakup, I'm gonna have to date Gen X guys because now I'm 39 and I can only date guys who are like late 40s now. Great. So like now, like, what is this? You know. So I went on this whole rant. So the Phish people found it on TikTok. They downloaded it. They uploaded it to these Facebook groups with toxic Phish people in them. And then they were all talking about me and cyberbullying me for like a month.
Wow.
So then I said, I doubled down. So then instead of being like, oh, I'm just going to like let these people talk about me, I was like, fine, I'm going to react to Phish. Let's actually see what this band's about. And in the end of the day, I'm like promoting myself, right? So like
Yeah.
I by doing that, it's like I could either be scared of them and let them cyberbully me and let them just like make a judgment on one stupid video I went on where I'm just like ranting, which is how TikTok works. If you rage bait people, you get up. If you're boring, no one cares, right?
Yeah.
So I did like an annoying voice, and like, so then I'm like, fine, I'm gonna start reacting to Phish. And then it started growing. Like people were like, oh, this girl's getting into Phish. Like, does she like it? Like, this is actually interesting, whatever. And then I actually rode the wave all the way from September to April and actually saw them in concert. So I rode it all the way. So then that started that. So then I was just a Phish reaction channel. And then people started being like, well, if you like Phish, you might like Goose. If you like Goose, you might like Billy Strings. If you like Billy Strings, you might like this. Oh, have you heard The Dead? I'm like, no, I haven't heard The Dead. And then they're like, well, you got to hear The Dead if you're listening to Phish. And so that's how it started.
So, question for you. Um, what has the reaction been in terms of volume? Not actual numbers, but just generally speaking. Because, like, when I watch these reaction videos, like, my algorithm decided that I like watching people talk about the dead. And apparently I do, but I didn't know I did until it told me I did. And then suddenly that's what I'm doing, right? And, but I always wonder, like, sometimes I'll look at the view counts on some and I'll be like, is this a lot or a little for when they do other stuff? And I'm sure that some people, it becomes a big part of their channel, and some people, it's kind of like a chapter in their channel's little thing, and they did a little dead thing and then moved on. What are you seeing in terms of, you mentioned the comments are blowing up. Is the dead community a significant driver of traffic on in your world?
Yes, yes. So I'd say that I think it's partially to do with demographics that YouTube users tend to be a little older. YouTube users are a lot of boomers and then I think elder Gen X because you guys didn't really adapt to Instagram and like
Right.
TikTok, right? So like millennials use Facebook and Instagram, Gen Z use Instagram and TikTok. You guys use Facebook and YouTube, right? So
Yep.
boomers basically only use YouTube. So I think a lot of that is that that's just where the audience is for the Grateful Dead, whereas there's not as many younger people. So I think even
Right.
if I were to start doing like a Gen Z thing, I just don't think they're on YouTube. I think on TikTok that would blow up, but I don't think it'd blow up on YouTube. What I do think is interesting, just generally, like bigger picture, is that I went to the Phish concert. 5 weeks later, I went to the Goose concert. In between that, I went to the Billy Strings set. I now have tickets to the Dead. I think it's kind of a bigger chapter of exploring bands and kind of going into the jam band community, meeting the fans in each group, kind of comparing them, analyzing them, seeing what's similar and different, see what they have in common and what they have different, and like which inspired what. I think that to me is kind of the overarching of how it all fits in. Like, I think because I still want to go see Billy Strings again, and he's going to play at Dead and Company. So that's like a whole like
Yeah.
fusion. And then Trey Anastasio is on the third day. You know, it's like so everything's kind of like coming together.
It's
If that
totally
makes
a web, and
sense.
these it totally makes sense. And these things are all incredibly related. You had a commenter, someone had commented on, there'd be no fish if it weren't for the dead. There'd be no this if it weren't for the dead. And I mean, and that's true because like these things inform each other, right? Like they set and they'd opened up a permission structure. It created a genre that didn't exist, and then folks have just discovered I can do there's a lot of space to work in this area because you've got bluegrass and Americana and country, you've got like crazy acid rock, you've got all these different pieces fused together, and people can come in as far as musicians go and act, and they plug into different parts of this. And so like it totally makes sense to go through this, and it's cool because you're looking at it with some historically as well as contextually. I in when I was living in DC, I was dating this woman, and this must be in 93, 92. So the Dead were still alive and doing their thing, and I knew there existed this thing called Phish. It seemed to me like some weird Dead knockoff. I just didn't, I knew it existed and that was it. And this woman I was dating had gone to University of Vermont and knew the guys, and she was really close with John Fishman, the drummer. And whenever they'd come to DC, they'd always leave tickets and backstage passes for her. So she brought me with to go see the band at Lisner Auditorium, GW campus. And so we met John backstage afterwards and kind of hung out in the green room or whatever, then watched the show and then hung out. They had just gotten their very first tour bus because they were going to shows in multiple vans. And so we hung out in the tour bus afterwards. And I remember thinking, you guys are going to be big, I think. You should go on Letterman. I think that would be your audience. But what was crazy was, as far as the music went, totally inaccessible. I go to this
Uh-huh.
thing and I'm just like, it's cacophony, it's noise, it's crazy shit. I couldn't hang my hat on anything. It wasn't until the Farmhouse album came out where I'm like, oh, songs. Like I can like get my head around these songs. But now I feel like some old grumpy man who's like, oh, this new stuff. I can't get into this new stuff. But
I
uh
know.
but they're all related. They're
They
all
are, and it is. And I think that I think what's cool is that nowadays people are very sad. Like the kids today are sad. The teenagers, the Gen Z are all miserable. They're all depressed. They have a worse life out. Like they just feel life's not going to be good for them. They don't have
Yeah.
economic opportunities. They don't have community. They're only living on their phones. So if I can even just get people to like go to a concert or like make it accessible for younger people or figure out a way that we can like facilitate this and kind of pass the torch. Like I'm all about like historical passing on, sharing information. These are all things that I really value. So I guess like the channel is gonna take the way it goes. Like
Yeah.
I definitely want to see through the Dead all the way through the Dead and Company concert. Then that's gonna lead to more people that I meet. That's gonna lead to more interviews. That's gonna lead to more like, oh well, did you check out this band? Or you should, you know, like I just think it's gonna be organic, and that's what I kind of went with, and that's how I was able to grow so fast because it all actually started with I was kind of stagnated in Phish because they're like I got fans in the Phish community and they like really embraced me, but it's not volume. It's like I have loyalists, but there's only like a few hundred of them, or maybe like
Right.
TikTok has 6,000 people. Like it's not enough to be like I can have a full channel about Phish. It's just not enough. So then when Billy Strings happened, someone told me about Billy Strings. I did this reaction to Billy Strings. I happened to cry in the video. That video has 7,000 views. And so that is the first thing, and that was on April 27th. From that day on April 27th to yesterday, this morning was the day that I had enough hours to click on I'm signing up for monetization. Now I'm in a waiting period,
Congratulations.
but I made it. So it took me
That's
exactly
awesome.
5 weeks, and the reason it worked is as soon as I got on that Billy Strings bus, that was like I was like, wait, they're playing the Hollywood Bowl in 2 weeks. I was like, I gotta go. I was like, Mom, I'm flying to LA. Pick me up at the airport. You can see Bob Dylan. She's like, great, let's go. So like it was just like I just kind of rolled with it, and then the Goose thing happened, and then I met that girl who's like a Goose influencer, and then I was like, oh, let me like collab with her. You know, like, I just am like being like creative and really assertive, and I'm also doing like 4 hours of videos a day. So like,
Well, yeah. I was going to say you must be working on this thing. It feels like 24/7 that you must be working on this because you are cranking out videos like every day. There's a lot of stuff that shows up,
every
and I'm
day.
like chasing it. I'm like, all right, I got to stay on top
Well,
of
that's
this. I
the
got
thing
to
is,
know
but
what's
it becomes. I figured like it's going to eventually become a channel, just like people want to watch a TV show. It's like, oh, I want to see what the latest episode is, right? Like it becomes a
yeah,
little bit addictive in a good way. Like people want to watch the nightly news, they want to watch their daily sitcom, right? So I feel if I can keep being with what people want to see and just keep cranking it out, because that content creation, it's just like I am the media. That's what Donald Trump said. He said, "You know, who is it? Elon Musk? You are the media now." I don't know. We are the media now, right? So
yeah.
whatever that
And it's going to
means,
be what it's going to be. I
it's
mean,
gonna be what it is. It's just like now it's like no one mainstream media is like whatever. It's like now everyone with a camera can be the media. So it's like why don't we just be the media?
yeah.
Why don't we be the
Yeah,
journalists?
and your journey is going to be your journey. I mean, there's no world in which the Dead were like, this is what we're going to be. They just said, this is what we want to do, and we'll figure it out each step of the way. And now there are business school classes about the Grateful Dead's business model.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like some people are like, oh, you're analyzing the poetry, or Hunter, you know, the people that like, you're not listening to the lyrics. Hunter was an expert poetry person, and you're not, you know, like the people get really upset when I'm not like understanding the meaning of Hunter's deep lyrics. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but like, this is like a whole nother level of depth that I'm not even prepared for because
Yeah.
I'm just coming in being like, what's going on with having two guitars in one band? I've never seen a band with two lead guitarists. You know what I mean? Like it's too
Yeah.
much. It's like I'm like this is like insane. And then it's like how many people are in this band? Why are there 17 instruments? Like this is like
That's right.
It's like it's a lot, right? So I'm just like, what are these songs? So I'm just coming in here being like, what is even going on? How did I never hear this before? It's like I've never heard something, so my ear isn't attuned to it, and I'm just going with it. But I think the fact that it's all meant to be in a way because this concert coming where I live, that I can just commute every day from my house in 35 minutes, like why would I not go, right?
Yeah, no, you have to be
So
there.
I'm gonna go, and then like I think so. This next month will be all about like preparing for that, and then I think the Dead is gonna be can be a big part. The question will be what's gonna happen once I've heard the majority of the catalog. You know, like do I then start to compare two things? I think doing interviews like this will be interesting, and I think after this interview gets published, there's gonna be a lot more people who want to get interviewed. That's how I think
Oh,
it's
I'm
gonna
sure.
happen. Because then people are gonna be like, oh, that reminded me of something I want to talk about. You know, so I just think it's like. I think it's just being willing to be adaptive, and that's what I've been doing. So as soon as I saw the Grateful Dead just pop off, I was like, I just had to keep pumping out Grateful Dead videos, and then I'm sprucing it. And then someone told me about the Allman Brothers. I didn't know what the Allman Brothers
Yeah.
was. I wouldn't have known except that you guys told me about it. And so I'm just going like dogs in a pile. Oh, you should hear this New Orleans funk band. I'm like, huh? Oh, you should hear this So I'm just going organically with what the people tell me, and everything I've decided to listen to from the Dead has been from a comment. So that ChatGPT was kind of like a joke of like, oh, what if I did have to ask ChatGPT, what would it
Yeah.
say? And then is this even a like 'cause just to show that how does one like me enter a world where we're not really welcome? Well, we're welcome, but we're not really welcome. Meaning like you guys don't really want more people buying the tickets. You know what I mean?
You know, it's
It's like
funny,
iffy. It's
but
like
there's something, and I didn't until I saw my first person reacting to the Dead. There's something so cool about watching someone else discover and enjoy this thing that was really important to you throughout your life. And so that's part of the appeal is like, I mean, it wouldn't be interesting to listen to someone watch The Dead and shit all over it and be like, I don't know why you all listen to this, but there's something magical about, and it doesn't have to be every era of The Dead that clicks with you. Like, not anyone can just sit and listen to like a 32-minute Dark Star and be like, yeah, that was like life changing, and
hey,
but
I got
to
through
see,
it. I
you
got
did.
through it.
You totally did. There's a studio version of it that's 3.5 minutes long
Great. I'm glad I heard the
because there's
32
only
one.
like 18 words in the
And
song.
it was a shuffle play too. I was like, let's just see what the shuffle play. I was like, okay, we're doing this. I'm like, buckle up, boys. Like, we're going
Wow.
in for the 32-minute Dark Star.
That was
I'm committed.
ambitious.
I'm ambitious, but hey, maybe they'll play it at the Dead and Company thing. So again, I think I like it. I like my favorite part really is interacting with the fans and my viewers, whatever. That's really my favorite part of it. It's not really about me. And then in the long run, like as I write more music, the album isn't even finished. Like my album is like, I did 7 songs and I have like probably a lot more to write for my whole lifetime. And even once I listened to Billy Strings, I was like, oh, I want to have an Americana song. I want to have like, like it inspired me. And so like, I think as I listen to the Dead, there'll be things that inspire me. Like already I
Yeah.
was like, you know what I need to do in my songs? In the Dead, there's never silent space. The singer will stop and the guitar will come in and do like a counter melody. And I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
doing that enough in my song. So I have already thought of that just from listening to the Dead. So when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about how can this impact my composing? I know that
Yeah.
sounds crazy, but that's actually what I've been thinking.
Well, that's called getting inspired by music, which is the whole point, I guess, to begin with. So your 7 songs, have you posted them or
Yeah, they're
are
on my
they?
other channel. So basically, my plan was build up a fan base, and then when I'm ready, I'm going to tell you guys about them. But they're online. They're just on my other channel.
Gotcha.
Some people know about it. They do a little research on me. They are not that hard to find because I wrote them under my real name. So, it's not that hard to find. But they're like, they're just not something that I just don't think you guys would like them so much because they're humorous. They're more like Phish style because they're like humorous dig songs. One is like a serious ballad, kind of like a la Adele, I guess. But one of my songs is like a fake country banjo. It's called Tech Bro Trash, and it's a dig song about tech bros, but it's done in like country Americana style with a banjo. So yeah, Tech Bro Trash.
That's cool.
You'll like Tech Bro Trash, but the rest of them are kind of like stupid. Like imagine like if Beatles songs were like a funny dig song. I don't know. I'm very inspired by They Might Be Giants. Like that's so. But now that I'm listening to the Dead, I'm like, could I ever write a song like Robert Hunter's lyrics, like so deep and like worldly? I'm like, I don't know. Like I'm like that's too much. Like I'm good at like making fun of people. I'm good at making fun of myself. I'm good at talking about my own pain. I don't know if I can like talk about the pain of the world or like make a. It's that to me is still like another level of like songwriting where I'm like, I don't know.
And it
So
has to be authentic because the
yeah.
reality is you're not going to be able to deliver something you feel good about unless it's really coming from
Yeah, so
you.
in a way, this is like an era. So basically, I went through my first era, and now I'm doing all my like research, and then I'm like learning more about music. And also, look, when I had the breakup, I had to find a new identity because I was basically when you're with someone for 6 years, you are like, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden I'm this. I'm like, well, what am I doing now? I'm just gonna go to another person who has their own
Yeah.
identity and cling to that. It's like, no, I'm gonna make my own identity. So that's also why I'm doing this. So it's kind of like going to concerts on my own is like the ultimate bravery. It's like being able to just go and do something and then not having any fear. That's what it's really about. Being and putting myself out there on a YouTube channel and like not letting anyone naysay me anymore. Or you know how many things I didn't do because I was afraid of what people would think of me when I was younger. And now I'm like, there's no more time. This is the time.
It is.
Can't let that hold me back anymore. Who cares?
So it feels good doing it, huh?
Oh yeah. Like I love just like I've always been creative, and the video part's really creative, and coming up with the ideas, and then like editing them, and I'm building a skill set regardless, whether this becomes something or whether I'm like, hey, I'm an expert social media manager now. Like, it's still a skill set. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's all good and it's fun. So I'm having fun, and it fills up my time. And instead of, I gave up on dating like a year ago. I was like dating, like, you know, like, oh, I'll go on a date, I'll go to a dinner. And then I was like, would I rather write this song or go on this date? And then I realized I'd rather work on my songs. And then
Yeah.
it became, would I rather film this YouTube video or go on this date? I'm like, I'd rather film this YouTube video. So I'm still in that where like I haven't really met anyone yet where I'm like, I want to not do this. Because I spent my whole life like, I don't know, I think for women at least, and we're like, I was such a good wife, you know, I was so like, let me do your laundry and your career takes preference and I'll take care of the kids. And like, I had that kind of mentality. So now that my kids are getting older and they're in high school and middle school, I'm like, oh, I need to like develop my path as an empty nester as well. So that's kind of
Yeah.
why I'm going to be a young empty nester, because I'm going to be 44 when my youngest goes to school. So I'm going
Wow.
to be a very young empty nester. So I need to have a full thing going on for me by then. So that's why I'm also doing this channel, because I want to be really involved in something I'm passionate about for like the rest of my career, basically. So yeah.
Sounds like you're on track to do it.
Thank you for joining me today. And like, I'm so excited to like just do minimal editing on this. It was like perfect. I don't really have to edit anything. And it's going to go up. So thank you for putting your face on my channel. And I think you're going to inspire a lot of people. And your memories will probably trigger other people's memories. Like, I was at Laguna Seca.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be people. I was there too.
You're going to get people being like, that was my first show too. Or like, I also went to Pittsburgh. Yeah, watch, it's going to happen. It always happens. So thank you. And if we can always chat again in the future. And if anything or have questions, I'll reach out. Because again, I
Always feel free to reach out.
I'm gonna make a video soon that's gonna be like, I'm going to Dead and Company soon. What do I do? Like, help. So
You're going to get a lot of folks offering to help you.
that's good. That's the best. It's all about, I just want happy community, and I'm all about the good vibes, and I'm all about abundance. Like, everyone just needs to not be all afraid of, you know, there's no scarcity in the world. There's only abundance. You just have to believe in it. So, all right. Well,
Like
have
that.
a great day.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Erica.
Bye. Thanks for joining me. Bye.
Bye.